Okay, go ahead.
Happy birthday to Daddy. Happy birthday to Daddy. I love you. I love you. You have great eyes.
Them bitches weak. That's why y'all like that SSG piece. This shit is not hit.
On November 1st, 2023, around 2:30 in the afternoon, Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies responded to reports of a shooting in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Porter, Texas. What they discovered in that driveway would expose a deadly revenge plot that had traveled over 1,500 miles from Sacramento's violent streets, targeting a 25-year-old rapper who thought he had finally escaped.
At 6:30, we're following the latest after a body was found in a driveway. This was the scene from Sky Eye within the last hour.
When deputies got here, they found a 25-year-old man dead after being shot multiple times in a driveway. All they know at this point is that there were two men arguing before one of them pulled out a gun and shot the other.
The victim was Vaishon Johnson, known in Sacramento's rap scene as Shooter Gang VJ, an emerging artist who had relocated to Texas seeking a fresh start, hoping to focus on his music and family while escaping the escalating violence back home. But on that Wednesday afternoon, the conflicts he tried to leave behind caught up with him in the most brutal way imaginable. Witnesses reported seeing a gray Pontiac Grand Prix following Johnson to his mother's home on Bitterroot Drive, and what happened next was nothing short of an execution. According to the police, Nishad Scruggs exited the vehicle and immediately began chasing Johnson, firing multiple shots as the young rapper tried desperately to flee. When Johnson collapsed in the driveway, barely clinging to life, Scruggs reportedly stood over him and continued firing, ensuring there would be no survival. First responders arrived to find Johnson with multiple gunshot wounds scattered across his body, and despite frantic attempts to save his life, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Why would someone travel all the way from California to execute a young rapper in his mother's driveway? To understand what happened that day, you need to understand where Vaishon Johnson came from and the dangerous world he inhabited.
I gotta be me, cause I can't be nobody else. Was in a hole, I couldn't see nobody else. Had like 8 court days, I ain't see nobody there. Out of sight, out of mind, nobody care. Tell me.
Born on June 13, 1998 in Sacramento, California, Johnson grew up in Oak Park, a neighborhood that has long been synonymous with gang culture and street violence in Northern California.
What's good with you, gang?
So my boy.
About time you slid it on me, nigga. A year later, though?
I ain't cat no my
A year later. Hey, bro, this
I ain't
nigga
gonna lie,
wild.
today I was like, I can't do it. I gotta come pull up on him and show some love.
Johnson was the youngest of 9 siblings, growing up in a household where survival often meant making choices that no child should have to make. His older brother, Carl Granderson, would go on to become a defensive end for the New Orleans Saints, signing a $52 million extension contract in September 2023, just 2 months before Vaishon's murder. The contrast between their paths, one leading to NFL glory and the other to a driveway execution, would haunt the family forever.
Shit, to me it'll seem regular, but to other people it probably won't be regular, but you know, little shit. I was a bad kid. I was one of them kids that, you know what I mean, get in trouble. Certain kids couldn't kick it with me and shit, so I was one of the bad ones, I ain't gonna lie.
From an early age, Vaishon was what people called a troublemaker, but in Oak Park. By 7th or 8th grade, he was already carrying his first gun, a Glock 22, and getting into fights that would define his teenage years.
Burglaries, my first like 12. I went to juvenile hall hella times. I ain't gonna lie, like
Break it down.
15,
Take us to the first one.
His first stint in juvenile hall came at age 12 for burglary, and over the next few years, he would cycle in and out of the system repeatedly, racking up somewhere between 15 and 20 separate trips to juvenile detention. But something happened during those long stretches behind bars that would change the trajectory of his life. Sitting in a cell with nothing but time, Johnson started writing raps, initially just to pass the hours, but eventually discovered a talent and passion that offered a way out of the cycle of crime and incarceration that had consumed so many of his peers. When he got out, he kept writing, kept recording, and slowly began building a reputation in Sacramento's underground rap scene.
barely started smoking, I remember all the suckers used to wanna be from Oakland. Now they wanna be from Stockton. Is you rapping or you hoeing? They'll fuck with anybody if they poppin', niggas bogus. I don't wanna touch no fit, but I can.
Really, I got old at like. I always, like I told you, I used to do juvenile hard time. You know, a nigga always gonna write for fun when he in jail. You
Right, shit, what else you gonna do up in that
yeah. So I was like 12 and shit, already writing little bootsy raps and shit.
Johnson adopted the stage name Shooter Gang VJ, aligning himself with the Shooter Gang Collective, a group of young rappers from Oak Park who channeled their street experiences into raw, unfiltered music. The collective included artists like Shooter Gang Coney, Shooter Gang JoJo, and Shooter Gang Fleecy, all of them navigating the dangerous intersection where music meets gang politics. Johnson's breakthrough came with tracks like Glock 30 featuring Spidey, which quickly gained traction, amassing 100,000 views in just 3 weeks on his own channel. This was followed by freestyles like Not a Rapper that showcased his raw talent in authentic street narratives. He released several projects between 2021 and 2023, including albums like Still Not a Rapper, Alley Oop Season, Big OTD, Pending Millionaire, and Fuck 'Em We Ball, each one building his reputation in Sacramento's competitive rap scene. But success in Sacramento rap came with a deadly price, especially when your music was intertwined with real gang politics. And for Vaishon Johnson, those politics were about to turn fatal, rooted in a beef that had been brewing for years in the streets of Oak Park. To understand why Vaishon Johnson was murdered in Texas, you have to understand the civil war that had torn apart Sacramento's Oak Park neighborhood, a conflict that would leave multiple bodies in its wake and turn former friends into mortal enemies. At the center of this deadly feud was the split between Shooter Gang and Hell Gang, two factions that emerged from the same Oak Park Bloods network, but would become bitter rivals over issues of loyalty, respect, and street politics. The Oak Park Bloods formed in the 1980s as Sacramento's answer to the gang warfare that had consumed Los Angeles, and for decades they maintained a unified front against external threats, primarily Crip sets from G Parkway and Fruit Ridge. But by the mid-2010s, internal tensions began fracturing that unity, with younger members forming their own crews and challenging the authority of established figures. Shooter Gang represented the new generation, hungry and aggressive, while Hell Gang aligned itself with rapper Mozzie, whose rising fame gave him influence and resources that created jealousy and resentment. What makes this story even more tragic is that Mozzie had initially been a mentor to Shooter Gang members, taking them on tour, featuring them in music videos, and even gifting them Shooter Gang chains as tokens of unity and respect. For a time, they were all part of the same movement, all representing Oak Park on the national stage. Shooter Gang JoJo had collaborated with Mozzie, and the relationship seemed solid, a rare example of unity in a scene often torn apart by ego and violence. But beneath the surface, accusations were festering. Shooter Gang members, particularly DeRay, began questioning why Mozzie was still associating with Gangster Jeff, a figure they believed was a snitch based on paperwork and videos they claimed to have seen. In street culture, being labeled an informant is perhaps the worst accusation possible, a stain that can never be washed away. And Shooter Gang felt that Mozzie's continued relationship with this individual violated fundamental codes of loyalty and honor. The breaking point came in mid-2020 during what would become known as the chain confiscation event, an event that would trigger a cascade of violence spanning years. During a studio session, a disagreement erupted over the Gangster Jeff situation, and things quickly escalated into physical violence. When Shooter Gang member Fleecy struck Mozzie, Mozzie's associate, Mozzie's bodyguard retaliated by assaulting Shooter Gang Coney and confiscating his chain, a symbolic act of dominance that cut deeper than any punch ever could.
I want to say when Shooter Gang Coney got his chain confiscated.
Okay, I love you always say confiscated instead of stole or took.
Confiscated. It was confiscated. So, you know, I think that's more.
So you have personal allegiances with Shooter Gang?
What happened next was nothing short of humiliation, designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. Mozzie launched what he called a greasy neck tour, where he and his affiliates wore Coney's chain publicly at shows and events, even allowing random fans to put it on while Coney's own music played in the background.
So with Shooter Gang Coney and Mozzie, I seen the tension coming. It wasn't So when it happened, it wasn't, but I feel like Mozzie waited until like certain individuals were gone to do it. But him doing that, he forgot who was still a part of Shooter Gang that still had some type of say-so in regards to the politics in Oak Park.
Shooter Gang retaliated by confiscating chains from Mozzie's camp, including ones belonging to associates like SSG Kobe and Gunther's Exotics, posting mocking photos online to return the disrespect. But symbols only satisfy so long before violence demands real blood. Reports suggest that Mozzie's bodyguard, the one who had taken Coney's chain, was killed shortly after the incident, allegedly by Red Paint members MG Stax and Mava. In June 2020, Shooter Gang member K Squeeze was shot in a freeway incident, a killing rumored to be a backdoor betrayal involving his own family members who had aligned with Mozzie's faction. At K Squeeze's funeral, his brother Bust Down Bandy was attacked, turning what should have been a moment of mourning into another battlefield. In September 2021, Red Paint Mava was killed at a party with the Mula twins, including Marco Mula, who would later be charged in Vaishon's murder, allegedly responsible, and even referencing it in their track Come Out. The violence was spiraling, with each death demanding retaliation, each retaliation triggering another response. The beef spilled into the music as well, with diss tracks serving as both artistic expression and literal threats. In May 2022, Mozzie released Tell the Truth, featuring Shorty Shorty, accusing Shooter Gang of not being real Oak Park representatives, claiming they were actually from suburbs like Elk Grove, and questioning their street cred. Coney responded with Free Smoke 2, featuring visuals of confiscated chains displayed in a case with rat imagery, directly calling out Mozzie for defending alleged informants and referencing multiple incidents in their ongoing war.
My click buzzing, we was in the field, oh yeah, your click wasn't. Paying for some shit already done, now that ain't it, cousin. A fair exchange for trying to play, now that's a skit, won it. But he gon' keep bluffing.
And Vaishon Johnson, Shooter Gang VJ, was right in the middle of it all. He released tracks targeting rivals, participated in the social media warfare, and made it clear through his music where his loyalties lay.
Talking about a chain, we been even with the stuff.
We just got a 2-for-1. It was fleecy to the throat.
It was like 5 deep, we really beefing with some hoes.
Wore that chain to a show, had a steak, think he bought.
In 2023, Johnson decided to relocate to Texas, moving to Porter to live near his mother and focus on his music career away from Sacramento's toxic environment. He had already survived one shooting in 2022, where fellow Shooter Gang member DeRay was killed, and the close call had apparently convinced him that distance was his best chance at survival. For a brief moment, it seems like he might have made the right choice, that he might actually escape the violence that had consumed so many of his friends. But in the world Johnson came from, beef doesn't expire just because you change your address. The investigation into Johnson's murder involved the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office Homicide and Violent Crimes Unit, crime scene investigators, the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, and law enforcement agencies in Sacramento, all working together to piece together how this cross-state murder came to be.
I'm Specialist Travis Wood with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. That's TRAVISWOOD. Today on November 1st at approximately 2:30 this afternoon, deputies with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office responded to the 20,100 block of Bitter Root Drive in reference to an assault with a firearm call. Upon arrival, deputies observed a 25-year-old male who was found deceased laying in the middle of the driveway with multiple gunshot wounds. Currently, we have our Homicide and Violent Crimes Division, along with crime scene investigators and the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office conducting their investigation. We are still in the very early stages of this. However, preliminary investigation indicates that there was an altercation between two males who knew each other. The suspect displayed a firearm and then shot the victim multiple times. Once again, it is believed that the victim and suspect do know each other. However, we do not have a positive identification on the suspect at this time. The suspect was observed to be leaving the area in a gray, approximately 2010 gray Pontiac sedan. This Pontiac had very dark limousine tint all the way around the vehicle, as well as had a red Pontiac insignia on the hood of the vehicle. Once again, like I said, we are in the very early stages. However, if y'all have any questions that I can answer.
The breakthrough came from a neighbor's security camera that had captured the license plate of the gray Pontiac Grand Prix used in the shooting. Investigators traced the vehicle's ownership through 4 successive sales, ultimately linking it to suspect Nishad Scruggs through a fraudulent Cash App transaction tied to an elderly individual in Minnesota. The killers had gone to significant lengths to obscure their tracks, using someone else's identity to purchase the getaway car, but they had underestimated how thoroughly modern law enforcement could follow a digital trail. Cell phone data further exposed the suspects' movements and communications, with toll records showing that the Pontiac Grand Prix had been in the Porter area multiple times in the days before the shooting, meaning they had been conducting surveillance, learning Johnson's routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Nishad Scruggs, aged 31 at the time, emerged as the primary shooter, the man who had chased Johnson down and executed him in his mother's driveway. Scruggs had a criminal history dating back to 2011, primarily in Harris County, Texas, including charges for assault, drug offenses, and weapons violations. In a 2021 incident, he had resisted arrest during a possession stop and attempted to retrieve a Glock from his backpack while struggling with a Harris County deputy, revealing a pattern of violence and disregard for law enforcement. A murder warrant for Scruggs was issued on June 4, 2025, and he was arrested in Sacramento on June 25, nearly 2 years after Johnson's murder. He was extradited to Montgomery County on July 16, 2025, and booked into the local jail, where he remains today. The district attorney's office recommended a $250,000 bond, but Judge Grant set it at $1 million, citing the severity of the crime and the defendant's criminal history. But Scruggs wasn't acting alone. Trevon Oates, aged 28 and known in Sacramento's rap scene as Marco Mula, was identified as a co-conspirator in Johnson's murder. Oates was associated with rapper Mozzie's Hell Gang faction, the very group that had been feuding with Shooter Gang for years. He was indicted for murder by a Montgomery County grand jury on October 7, 2025, but there's a complication. Oates is currently detained in Sacramento on an unrelated homicide charge, pending resolution of that case before he can be extradited to Texas to face charges in Johnson's murder. The connection between Oates and the Mozzie camp provides crucial context for understanding the motive. Reports and community discussions suggest this murder was retaliation tied to the ongoing feud stemming from the 2020 chain incident and related violence. Johnson's social media posts, his music, and his unwavering loyalty to Shooter Gang had made him a target, and when the opportunity presented itself, his enemies acted with deadly efficiency. VJ's sister confirmed connections to the beef through social media, though the exact evidence directly linking the murder to the 2020 chain incident remains partially anecdotal in public reports. What's clear is that this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of violence that has consumed Sacramento's Oak Park neighborhood, with multiple deaths, including K-Squeeze in 2020 and Mava in 2021, all connected to the same internal beef. The impact on Johnson's family has been devastating. His brother, Carl Granderson, channeled his grief into his performance on the football field, leading the New Orleans Saints with 5.5 sacks that season, despite the profound loss. Teammates noted his resilience, how he managed to perform at an elite level while processing the murder of his youngest brother, a testament to both his strength and the tragic reality that so many families face when violence claims their loved ones. As of today, no trial has commenced for either suspect. Scruggs remains in Montgomery County Jail awaiting proceedings, while Oates sits in Sacramento, his extradition delayed by the unrelated homicide case he's facing there. The broader context reveals patterns in cross-state gang violence, with federal and state authorities taking downs of Oak Park Bloods networks in 2025, targeting high-ranking members for drug trafficking, firearms offenses, and violent crimes. Now you understand the full scope of how a stolen chain in 2020 led to multiple murders, tore apart an entire community, and ultimately ended with a 25-year-old rapper being executed in his mother's driveway while trying to build a better life. This is the real cost of rap beef when it intersects with gang politics, a cost measured in young lives cut short and families left to grieve. What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.